Hey everyone, what's going on? Today on June 6th, one of the major mainstream media articles that I kept seeing was of the death of the son of this country singer named Granger Smith. And when I looked into the story, I found out that it was connected to my own life. And if you followed my channel, I often talk about this. I talk about how these weird things that go on with my everyday life are somehow related to many of the mainstream media articles. For example, one day I was at work and I wrote Mary Poppins on the back of this lottery ticket. And the next lady who walked into the store where I work was wearing a shirt that said supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I talked about Mary Poppins, and then just 2 days later, the mainstream media was running a headline article about this guy who blew away with an umbrella just like Mary Poppins. And they even referred to Mary Poppins in the article. And, there's many, many other examples. If you check my videos out, you'll understand more of what I'm talking about. And in order to understand what I'm talking about, you possibly might need to look up this term called synchromysticism. And that is basically finding meaning in these odd occurrences that happen within your everyday life. And when you understand some ancient knowledge practices such as Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism that has a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number with the word. And within Kabbalah, they practice Gematria, which is literally the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And let me explain this to you here, if you're new here. So we got this Granger Smith's son. His son who died, his name was River Smith. And think about how today just so happens to be 6-6. And if you type out River Smith in Gematria, his name equals 66. And he just so happened to die on the date of 6-6. Also, just the word Smith equals 66. And he died in Texas. That's important to what I'm going to talk about here in a second, but Texas also equals 66. So right away when I looked at this story, I noticed that the dad here, the country guy, when he shared this on Instagram, it said he was in Georgetown, Texas. Now, this wouldn't seem like much to most people, but just last night I documented about how YouTube removed my video about Allen Iverson and Philadelphia being the next possible false flag or whatever. And I'll explain this later in the video, but in this post, I talked all about Georgetown because Allen Iverson attended Georgetown, and there's these things that I've been following, such as this big connection to the Ethiopian airline crash that happened on the date of 3/10 and how it syncs up to August 10th this year. And it's all about Rastafarianism. And another guy that I have been following along with Allen Iverson for all of these years since 2015 was Patrick Ewing, another basketball player. And him and Allen Iverson are the only #1 draft picks to come out of Georgetown. And Patrick Ewing just so happens to be from Jamaica, right? Think about Jamaica and Rastafarianism. But I mentioned Georgetown. Then later that night, I was talking to a guy on Facebook. His channel's in the description, called Falcor2. And he was telling me about this show called the OA. And I can't remember what it was, but I just looked up the show, and I looked at the guy who was the producer. His name's Zal Batman Gleesh. And if you followed what I've been saying about August 10th, it is important to Batman as well. So I thought, how interesting. And when I looked up this guy, he went to Georgetown, right? He went to Georgetown University, and I'm going, how crazy. And he's also from France. And August 10th is important to France too, because this year, August 10th will be the 227th anniversary of the fall of the French monarchy. And French monarchy just happens to equal 227 in Gematria. So does French Revolution. And Napoleon was born on the 227th day of the year, and so on. It's important to all of these things, and Batman was important to it too. So I was going, how interesting, this guy went to Georgetown. And then now today, we get the story about this country singer, and the first thing I notice is that he posts from Georgetown, Texas. I'm thinking, what is that? What's going on with that, But then, of course, his son equals 66, and he dies on 6/6, right? And I'll mention this a little bit later about Texas, but there's something important to these phone calls that I get. I always get these phone calls that are in connection to the area of some of these major stories that are going on in the mainstream media. But I documented a few other things. I always look up the person. This guy born on September 4th, and then his son dies on June 6th. And if you go from June 6th to his birthday, it's 90 days. And on Wikipedia, it says that he has an alter ego called Earl Dibbles. I think I wrote it in there wrong. Let's see what. Hold on. Let's see really quick. Earl Dibbles Jr. equals 90. And, look at this. So his alter ego equals 90, and his son dies 90 days before his birthday. And the media highlights it as he died in a tragic accident. If you write tragic accident out, it equals 90. Also, if you go from this guy's birthday to June 6th, it's 9 months and 3 days. And that's interesting because his full name, Granger Kelly Smith, equals 93, right? And his son dies 9 months and 3 days after his birthday. So when I was looking this guy up, I was like, man, I feel like I've looked this guy up before for some reason. It just doesn't sound that familiar to me, but I feel like I had looked this guy up before. And I do DJ a lot, and around here where I live, lots of people love country music. So I went to my iTunes and I just typed in this guy's name to see if I had any songs by this guy, and the only one I had was some song off of his first album called Bury Me in My Blue Jeans. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't get it. But I just feel like I've seen this guy before, right? And I kind of stopped looking into it for a little bit, and I was doing some other things, and I came back and I remembered that at work today I got this. It said I had a message from a guy about DJing in a couple weeks for his wife, and I have two different Facebook accounts, and one of them I use to share this knowledge, and the other one I kind of just use as a family friend type of one, but it's all mixed up now anyway. All these people who have added me, it doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, I'm always logged into the one where I share this knowledge, and so I had to log into my other one earlier, and when I logged in, I didn't even have a message from this person, which was weird. I was like, the only reason I even logged into that other Facebook account was because I got this message that said on my phone, and I don't have Messenger on my phone. So the only way I can view the message is to go on to Facebook on my computer. And when I got there, the message wasn't there, but one of the top things that was on there was this thing from my cousin Craig's wife. And she posted about how this Granger guy was a great man and he honored her brother's name and legacy beyond words. And I was like, what does that mean, And I went to Yahoo and I just typed in her brother's name and I typed in Granger Smith. And the deal is that her brother actually had PTSD from going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and he committed suicide. And this country singer, Granger Smith, let's type it out really quick. Okay, Granger Smith. He wrote this, so he has all these albums, but he recently just released this documentary that he made called They Were There, a Hero's Documentary. And when you look up this documentary, he chose, what is it here? In this self-produced new documentary, Granger walks for 5 days in the solace of nature It tells the stories of 5 different U.S. soldiers, and one of these 5 soldiers just so happens to be her brother. So my cousin Craig's wife, her brother who committed suicide because of PTSD, his story is in this Granger Smith movie, right? And I mean, it's odd to me. Think about how many soldiers who have died, and he's one of the 5 people that's mentioned in this country singers documentary. It just seems kind of weird, especially how I talk about how these media stories are always synced up to what is going on in my life and whatnot. And I went and watched this documentary even, and I mean, this documentary even has my cousin Craig and his wife in it. Like, what are the odds that they even have this connection to this guy, right? And what's so even more weird is that I haven't seen either one of these guys in forever. So I haven't seen her in a really long time. Maybe I might have seen them at his sister got married, my cousin Alicia, and I had a DJ or I had a band gig that night, so I went up there for a little while, and I didn't stay long, but I don't even feel like I really talked to her or him really that day. But I possibly saw them, whatever. I might have talked to them. And I don't even remember when that was, but it was a while ago, and I think it was maybe last summer, and I haven't seen either one of these people for a long time. And then just the other day at the gas station I work at, my cousin Craig came in, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing in town?" Because they live like an hour or so away, or roughly, I don't know exactly how far it is, but roughly an hour, right? And he was working or whatever, and he was in the town in Dunlap. So it's just so strange. I just saw him like less than a month ago. Hadn't seen him forever, and he was in the town, and now this is all coming up. And what's interesting is I know what it is. I know the reason that I am seeing this story and why it is connected to all of this. And it is connected to August 10th. And I just can't explain the details because it's hard to explain, but I cannot explain the details. Certain people that I know would understand what I'm saying, but I don't want to be disrespectful. So, I can't explain the details of this, but I know for a fact that it's connected to what I've been talking about with August 10th and why August 10th is important. So we'll just leave it at that, but I just know that is why this story is going on. And it's also interesting, today's D-Day, right? The 75th anniversary of D-Day, something that back when the Kentucky Derby was going on, I was talking about why D-Day was going to be important this year, being the 75th anniversary. Also, how it was synced up to the horse Omaha Beach, who got scratched on 5/1, the day that D-Day was actually supposed to happen, then it got postponed to 6/6. But the jockey Mike Smith's full name equaled 75, and D-Day happened on a date numerology of 75. And if you read out World War III, it equals 75. And there's some interesting narratives going on with North Korea and so on. I'll just pull up this post because we got a story about Donald Trump as well on talking about his comments on D-Day and Vietnam, right? And remember, Donald Trump met Kim Jong-un earlier this year in Vietnam. And what else is interesting is Russia equals 75. Today I saw a story about Russia saying D-Day, it meant nothing, and it was something, the turn in the war was something to do with Russia or whatever, right? But Russia equals 75. They told us they highlighted was never a fan in this article. That equals 75. So, Kim Jong-un's birthday, too. If you look him up, according to the Swiss records, his birthday is also July 5th, 7/5. So, there's something, important to it. That's why they brought up Vietnam with Donald Trump and D-Day, because, Kim Jong-un met Donald Trump in Vietnam, and then the meeting didn't go well. Their first meeting was on June 12th, 612 in World War equals 612 in Gematria. So, there's something really, really important to what's going on. And then we get the story that's connected to his documentary about the soldiers and whatnot on D-Day. Just pretty interesting stuff. Sticks out to me a lot. And, honestly, I think we're going to have there's something to do with a war on the horizon. Maybe it won't be this year, but there's something definitely in the next couple years, something big time connected to the war symbolism that has been going on, if you pay enough attention. So, that guy's documentary, look at his documentary. He released his documentary on November 29th of 2018 on YouTube. And if you go from November 29th to the day his son just died, it's 6 months and 8 days. And would you believe that his name equals 68? Get Granger Smith. Granger Smith, 68. And his son dies 6 months and 8 days after that documentary that he just released. If you go watch this documentary, in the very beginning, after they do the whole opening scene, and they tell you, here, let's just look at it. They do the whole opening scene, and they tell you the title of the show here. Then it skips over to him kissing his son who just died, and he tells him goodbye or whatever.
Bye, buddy. You know where I'm going?
Just interesting that it skips over to him saying goodbye, buddy, to his kid that just died. And 6 months and 8 days later, and then his name equals 68. It's craziness. What I truly dislike about this documentary, though, is just the same things that I dislike about the world that we're living in general. It's just this big patriotic film, and I can't get on board with that. You know what I mean? It's all a lie. They talk about, our freedom and this or that. We are not a free country. We are not free people. That is all just the biggest propaganda of all time that is just played out every single day on every American. And it doesn't just go for America. It goes for every other country. There are people of this world who control the world, and they understand this knowledge that I am talking about. And, they've created all of these different sides and these different narratives by using the same type of propaganda all over the world. And that's why everybody hates everybody so much. And, people just don't understand that. And it's so funny just seeing the majority of people in the United States that love the military and are all patriotic, and they also love Jesus and the Bible supposedly, and then they have no problem going to war and killing towel heads or this or that. It's just so ridiculous. Like it's people don't use their brain. It's all propaganda. You know what I mean? You're told since day one in your life in America that America rules. You're supposed to stand up for everything your country's doing, even if it involves killing people and whatever else that most people wouldn't find morally acceptable. It's just a joke. Anyway, moving on. The whole point I wanted to get across with this whole story is that it's just really odd that I have this close of a connection to this guy even. My cousin is in this documentary that he made and so on. And the last time that this happened to me, my aunt's brother, who I do not know, she married my dad's brother, so I don't know her side of the family that well, but he was a principal at a high school in Harrisburg, South Dakota. And some kid supposedly shot him at the school on the 273rd day of the year on 273rd Street and Sioux Falls, South Dakota equal 273, and a bunch of other 273s. Can't remember all the details, but when he got shot, that story made the mainstream media. That story was a headline on CNN one day, and I thought, that was back in 2015. And what's so interesting is it's this guy right here, and just earlier this year, for some reason, I had relooked this guy up, and I noticed that he was now the superintendent at the school in Carroll, Iowa. And then apparently he just resigned this year on, well, February 8th. They're talking about, this article's talking about it. And if you've been following what I've been talking about, I mean, you have to come and follow my blog, but it's interesting that he was for Carroll, Iowa. And I just recently found out that the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, he's also from Carroll, Iowa. If you look up Nick Nurse, he is from Carroll, Iowa. He went to the Catholic school, Carroll Kemper, and so on. And I was like, what are the odds of this, Because I've been to this town multiple times. It's only a little less than an hour away from where I live. So I was like, what are the odds that the NBA coach is from Iowa even, right? And Slipknot's been really important to Iowa and so on. And a big thing, there was a big major media article going on about how the rapper Drake had rubbed this guy's shoulders. And then, of course, yesterday or a couple days ago now, we got the story of the Golden State Warrior part owner who pushed the shoulder of Kyle Lowry and whatnot, right? But Drake has been this big part of everything that's going on. And I started thinking about, Carroll, Iowa, and just Iowa in general. And in Des Moines, there is Drake University. So there's something important to it. Drake is a male duck, and if you go back to last summer, all of these things that I was talking about that were important to August 10th and other things with Rocky Colavito, there was a big duck theme, right? And Drake is a male duck, so I know there is something important to Drake and what is going on with Slipknot and so on. So I went and looked up Drake University, and within it talks about how Drake University was the place where the Paul McCartney is dead hoax began. And this is really important to a lot of narrative things that have been going on. And there's been this big narrative with Donald Trump and the flag and kneeling during the national anthem pretty much since he's been the president. His birthday is also on June 14th, which is Flag Day. It was super connected to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and the Eagles are important because the Eagles are from Philadelphia, and Toronto is important because of August 11th this year. August 10th and 11th have been really important, but SummerSlam is going to be held in Toronto this year. And for a number of years, I have talked about how the death of Roddy Piper was synced up to Philadelphia, and he was also on the TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And we had a story about Hulk Hogan being racist just before Roddy Piper died. And Hulk Hogan in history got his revenge against Earthquake in Philadelphia at the Spectrum, right? And that was at SummerSlam. So it's important that SummerSlam is going to be held this year on Hulk Hogan's birthday in Toronto. The flag was also originally sewn in Philadelphia at 239 Arch Street, which 239 is the 52nd prime number. That's where the Eagles won Super Bowl 52. And Donald Trump called out the kneeling on the date of 23/9. And then they told us he weighed 239 pounds, and so on. But Toronto was also important because that was a big place of, battles and whatnot in the War of 1812, right? And that was the war where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem in Baltimore. And the reason it's so important is because in Jewish Gematria, Philadelphia equals 205. And this year, on the anniversary of the national anthem being written, it's the 205th anniversary of the national anthem being written. And there's also the harvest moon that is on that day. And That is why we had the death of Neil Young's wife earlier this year, because he has that album and the song called Harvest Moon, and he wrote the song Philadelphia for the soundtrack to the movie Philadelphia. There's a lot of interesting narratives. It all points back to Philadelphia. That's why Kawhi Leonard's crazy shot that made them advance in the NBA playoffs, the most memorable shot of the season, or the last 10 years most likely, was against Philadelphia. There was something important to Philadelphia and how it syncs up, And of course it gave them 92 points, I believe it was, and Kawhi Anthony Leonard equals 92. The Raptors just won tonight and the Warriors had 92 points. It never fails. But the reason that this Drake University is more important too is, so the Paul McCartney stuff, if you remember Charles Manson, I was talking about how Charles Manson was important to the kneeling during the national anthem, and then less than a month later, or just a little bit over a month later, Charles Manson ended up dying. And the reason it was important is because kneeling is, kneeling, and they weren't standing up. And Charles Manson has the helter-skelter theory that's based on the Beatles song, right? Think about Paul McCartney, but he has the helter-skelter theory about blacks rising up, and the white people and his family, they might have to help the blacks start to rise up, and so on, right? And then later that year, we had Justin Timberlake in the Super Bowl doing the halftime show, and it was the first time since he showed Janet Jackson's boob when she was singing songs off of her album called Rhythm Nation 1814, which she even admits was in honor of the year Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem, which seems a little odd that she would even have an album like that. But the year after that happened, they had Paul McCartney do the halftime show because they wanted to make sure that it was safe and whatnot, right? So there's this big narrative with the Beatles, Charles Manson, and so on. And we also recently had the death of Doris Day. Let me see if I can find it here. Let me just type in Doris Day really quick. And when you look up Doris Day, you find out that her son is actually Terry Melcher. And this is important because Terry Melcher actually lived in the house where the Manson family went and committed their first murders on August 9th, right, against Sharon Tate and so on. And her husband was Roman Polanski, who was important to the stuff I was talking about right around the same time that Charles Manson died, because on the Family Guy, where they make fun of Kevin Spacey and Stewie getting molested, right, on that episode, originally they were going to say Roman Polanski, apparently, according to the Wikipedia page, and they end up saying Kevin Spacey and so on. But then Charles Manson died, and it's important to, Roman Polanski's wife, who they killed on August 9th. But Doris Day just died, and then her son is Terry Melcher, who he pretty much snubbed Charles Manson in regards to a record deal and whatnot. So I knew there was something important to Charles Manson. I documented all this stuff about Charles Manson again. I even talked about the Beach Boys, and Charles Manson had wrote this song that the Beach Boys stole, apparently, and that song came out on the album. I think the album was called 2020 or something like that. Yeah, their album was called 2020, which is next year. So there's something important to it. But, this is back in May 13th, and then, just the other day, May 31st, I also said, it reminds me of Charles Manson, right? Where did I say that? Makes me think about Charles Manson, May 31st. And then, what do we get just a few days ago? We get none other than a story about one of the Manson family members who got denied parole, right? This person's still going to have to stay in prison. And, of course, that same day we got a story about Kevin Spacey in the mainstream media. What are the odds that Kevin Spacey all of a sudden in the mainstream media? The same time that we get this, this Manson follower that isn't going to get paroled. And the killings that she actually committed were on none other than August 10th of 1969. August 10th, this big day that I keep saying is important. And I have been saying forever that it is important to the Chinese pig year. That's why Slipknot's important, because of the death of Paul Gray, who they also called the Pig. And, the Manson family even wrote death to pigs on the walls after they killed people, right? Death to pigs. And even funnier, just a couple weeks ago, or it might have been like a month now, but I took my daughter to band practice, and she was playing with my friend Pat, who's the singer in the band. She was playing with his stepson or whatever, and he was playing the piano because he's sort of picked up piano over the years a little bit, and he started playing this song. I didn't know what it was, and I was like, "Oh, it sounds pretty cool. What is it?" And then he started explaining it to me, and it was the song "Piggies" by the Beatles, right? And I was like, "Huh, how hilarious!" The song "Piggies" by the Beatles, and I've been documenting all this stuff, and then he randomly learns this song. He has no idea because he doesn't ever listen to anything I say, and he's a really smart guy, but he's not awake to the world, and so on. So it's just funny that he's randomly learns this song "Piggies" and whatever. But the pig year is really important. If you go back and watch, I'll leave some links in the description. But I was talking about how everything is connected to 2016, when this guy on YouTube named Monograph had said that Zachary K. Hubbard should watch out for Christmas Eve or whatever, and then on Christmas Eve a car crashed into his house, and much, much more. But later on in the year, in April, he made a video about the number 166, and that was a number that I was talking about like crazy. And, Zach even had commented how I was talking about this number a whole lot, and then Monograph makes this video about 166, and he makes it 166 days after my birthday. And then I listened to the Gematria effect later that night, and this lady calls in and says that she's Monograph's next victim, and he tried to kill her pet pig. And right when she said that, I was sitting next to two stuffed animal pigs that my daughter had called her pet pigs, and she went to bed, and I was supposed to watch them, right? So I know that there is something important, and that's why I've been talking a lot about Francis Bacon Gematria, because it's been really important, and it hasn't failed at all this year. It's connected to everything that I've talked about, but it's Bacon, right, reminding us of the pig year and so on. And it's just really important to a lot of these things that keep coming up in my life, right? These pig stuff, right? And I'm trying to think, I was going to talk about a pig thing here. Now I lost my train of thought, but I don't know. We'll keep moving on here. I'm just talking now, but let's go back and look at a post here, because this is the type of stuff that I'm talking about. There's these like pointless things that happen to me, and they just seem so pointless. And then when I think about what is going on with it, it is always synced up to what I've been talking about. So let me see if I can find it here. So this August 10th has been really important to the World Lion Day as well, pigs and lions. But I documented all the stuff about trolling as well, and how Buffy the Vampire Slayer is important to this troll theme. And then, of course, we got a story about Buffy the Vampire Slayer getting trolled and so on, right? And it's even funnier because we keep getting these stories in the NBA Finals, too, about, like, Drake trolling people. He trolled the daughter of the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, and then the other day he trolled Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. And then we got the story of the people trolling the girlfriend or the wife, the Warriors. Let me see here. People trolling, whatever, the Golden State Warriors owner's wife. They're trolling her because she was talking to Jay-Z, and Beyonce supposedly got mad, right? So there's all these things with trolling that is going on, and you have to watch some links in the description. I don't want to re-explain all of the trolling stuff, but the reason I brought all this up is because the number 310 has just been super duper important. That's why I even documented how Charles Manson died 3 months and 10 days after his birthday, and so on. And I discovered that Canada is seemingly really, really important. And a while back, we had that Toronto van attack. It was in 2018 that reminded us of the Nice, France van attack that happened on the 227th anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. And then, of course, August 10th this year is all about 227 and the fall of the French monarchy and so on. So it's an important day to France, big time. And in Toronto, we had that van crash last year, and that van crash was synced up to Mini-Me. Mini-Me on Austin Powers had died, and, you know, Beyonce is also in that, the gold member, right? And I'll explain this in a second, but moral of the story, I looked up Canada because when Mini-Me died, it was important to the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, and Mike Myers, who is from Canada, I believe, and so on. There's this big Canadian theme that was going along with it, and Canada just so happens to have 3 territories and 10 provinces, so another 310. And, you know, I was just talking about Canada and the ongoing narrative with Donald Trump. If you remember last year, there was even an article that said Donald Trump invokes the War of 1812 with Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, and so on. And then he imposed tariffs on Canada and so on, right? Because it's like this narrative that they have going on with the War of 1812. And the War of 1812 was really just like a minor piece or theater to the French Revolution stuff, right? The Napoleonic Wars and so on. Plus, if you go back to the 2015 Paris attacks, it was all about Team America. Like the South Park movie creator guys, they have that movie Team America that's synced up to North Korea, but, you know, they're in Paris or whatever, there's the Paris attack, and then they go back to America, and it zooms in on Everyone Has AIDS, the musical, and that's important to the Kevin Spacey stuff too, but it's just too much to explain. But they come back, you know, and then so the Paris attacks happened in 2015, and then right after that happened, we got Charlie Sheen coming out and saying that he had AIDS or whatever, right? And there's just this big narrative that was going on with it, and they were making sure that we knew that Team America was important to the Paris attacks. And when I think about South Park, you think about the bigger, longer, uncut movie where there's the war with Canada, right? You know, blame Canada and so on. So I just feel like there's something important to that South Park movie and how it syncs up here. The South Park creators synced up to something that's going on with Canada and the United States. Maybe there's going to be a big attack in Canada, or I don't know for sure. I don't know what's going to go on with it. You know, Toronto, though, on August 11th, where SummerSlam is going to be held, it's pretty interesting to me. But all of the Toronto stuff just really seemingly is pointing back to Philadelphia for whatever the reason. And think about the Golden State Warriors, who were originally the Philadelphia Warriors. We also, you know, the Notre Dame fire that was all synced up to the Notre Dame fire in France earlier this year. And if you remember at the Notre Dame football game earlier in the year, there was an eagle who landed on a fan. And I was talking about how it was connected to this eagle who landed on the Seattle Mariners player, James Paxton. And James Paxton also threw the first no-hitter in Canada last year, and the eagle landed on him. And, you know, it was synced up to the Eagles from Philadelphia and so on. So the Notre Dame fire synced up to this Philadelphia stuff. That van attack reminds me of the 227th anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. Nice, France van attack. There was also a Toronto explosion at the restaurant called Bombay last year, something Bombay, and I talked about how it was synced up to the Mighty Ducks and Gordon Bombay, and the Warriors that play in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Also, the movie Happy Gilmore, where he learns how to putt on the Earthquake Golf Course, and the building that falls over has the black cube on the top that looks like the Comcast Center in Philadelphia. And he's trying to save his grandma, and his grandma's name was Frances Bay in real life. So there's something in regards to how all of that is synced up. And also in Happy Gilmore's wearing the Warriors shirt at the very beginning when he's trying out for the hockey team and whatnot. And in the movie D3, the Mighty Ducks, when they play the varsity is actually the Warriors. So there's something interesting to all that. Also, Happy Gilmore's favorite hockey team is the Boston Bruins, who are in the Stanley Cup right now, and so on. So just interesting how it's synced up to these two teams that are both in the championship right around the same time and whatnot. But anyway, so I'm rambling on here, just trying to make it make sense to people, but when I made this blog post, I don't even know exactly how it came out of this, but I just said a random thought because 2 nights ago I wanted to watch this film Blank Check, the Disney movie where he writes the blank check, and Claire wouldn't go to bed, so I couldn't turn it on the TV, and I realized that she was trying to watch some other movie that I'd never seen before, and I was watching it, and I realized that it was the Little Orphan Annie movie with Jamie Foxx in it, and she was really into it, so I was like, oh, no big deal or whatever, and I guess it's just called Annie, but Little Orphan Annie. And I brought it up because that Toronto van attack was important to the death of Mini-Me, and it reminds me of the song Just the Two of Us by Will Smith, who's from Philadelphia, but also the song Hard Knock Life, which originally came from Little Orphan Annie. And, I had talked about how Mini-Me was important to the Toronto van attack, and then I was thinking about how that's kind of weird that Claire was trying to watch that movie, Annie, that also has this connection to what I'm talking about. And it really seemingly doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I used to have a video about Little Orphan Annie from, 2015. And what's funny is that in this video, I even mentioned the date of August 10th. And I talk about how when it went to the Broadway, or before it went to Broadway, it had a trial run on August 10th. And I was like, what are the odds? So, I don't know, it's just funny. So I talked about August 10th in my Little Orphan Annie video, and then I went on to talk about how Mike Myers is in Bohemian Rhapsody, that's connected to Slipknot and the Kanye stuff, and Jamie Foxx has that connection to Kanye, and then Jay-Z and Will Smith also both partially produced the film Annie, and Jay-Z has the song Hard Knock Life, and so on. And then the very next day, we get a story about Jay-Z being the first billionaire to billionaire rapper or whatever. We'll pull that story up here in a second, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. What did I say here? Let's go find it here. So I randomly talk about, Jay-Z and the song Hard Knock Life in this post, and then pretty sure it was the next day we got the story about Jay-Z becoming the first billionaire rapper, right? And of course it was 6 months and 1 day before his birthday. The word billionaire equals 61, and a bunch of other things. And I pointed out too that in English extended gematria, if you just write out the letters J and Z, it equals 810, like August 10th, And then, of course, I had stopped, when I was writing this blog post up, I had stopped for a second, and right when I looked up at the TV, this is what I saw, and I heard him go, Piggy 500, So it's just like, it makes me wonder, thinking about all the stuff I was talking about, the Eagles in Philadelphia. It was synced up to the 88th anniversary of the stock market crashing, and Herbert Hoover a president from Iowa who was born on August 10th. But Piggy reminds me of Piggy Banks as well. So, even more so than, so we get that story about Jay-Z, and now we're getting another story about Jay-Z in regards to the Toronto Raptors and, the Golden State Warriors NBA Finals and whatnot. And think about Jay-Z, who's all about the Illuminati. Think about Drake, who is all about the Illuminati. Think about Kanye West. It's all about the Illuminati. Think about Beyonce. And think about Beyonce's connection to that Austin Powers movie. She's actually a Goldmember that has the song Hard Knock Life where they parody it. And, and when Mini-Me died even, I believe it was the same day we got a story about Madonna having some thing with Tupac. And, Madonna's also wrote the song Beautiful Stranger for Austin Powers or whatever. And when they do the Hard Knock Life song on that movie, they're wearing their bandanas like Tupac. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. But Beyonce equals 120, like Illuminati, like Drake, like Aubrey Graham, real name. Like Kanye West equals 120. And remember, France is really important to the Bavarian Illuminati as well, right? So it's something super important. I've talked a lot about Alex Trebek too. Alex Trebek, also from Canada. So talked about how he might possibly die today, I guess, June 8th. And, the 68th prime number is 337. And this year on October 27th, it will be the 337th anniversary of Philadelphia. And that just so happens to also be the day that the song Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z, the single, was released, October 27th. Drake's super important to what's going on here. To go clear back even in the very beginning of this video, I talked about the country singer Granger Smith. And I started this video last night, and I'm trying to finish and just talk, I guess, tonight. But his son, I saw, actually died from drowning, which was important to all of that duck theme stuff that I was talking about. I talked about how there was this big drowning theme synced up to Goldberg the goalie and the Mighty Ducks, and then a couple days later in the mainstream media, we got the duck boat drowning in Branson, Missouri, right? So it's just crazy. Then Goldberg the goalie got arrested a few weeks after that, all synced up by the numbers. So let's look at my Allen Iverson thing, and then I'm going to end the video here. But on 6/5, June 5th, YouTube removed my Allen Iverson video from 2015. It came out on 12/12, which is interesting. That's the day that I put it out, was 12/12. And just before this happened, I documented about this movie called Perfect Bid, and I talked about The Price is Right, and this guy, Terry Neese, who got the perfect showcase on The Price is Right, and he reached out to me just before the Las Vegas attack, and he's from Las Vegas, and, he wanted to reach me by email, and I emailed him, and he responded back saying he'd get a hold of me, and then he never did. I don't know what the deal is, if he forgot, or I have no clue, but he wrote a 134-page book that's on Amazon. His name equals 134, and he reached out to me 134 days after his birthday. And he is from Henderson, Nevada, which is next to Las Vegas, and then we got the Vegas shooting the very next day. And on the Jesuit anniversary that year, I had been talking about it all year. The Jesuit anniversary was important. Some big event was going to happen close to the time of the Jesuit anniversary. And then we had the Vegas attack. But on the Jesuit anniversary, I got a phone call from Nevada as well. And I don't know who it was. Just before that, I got a phone call from Houston just before Hurricane Harvey. And then in November that year, I got a phone call from San Antonio just before we got that Sutherland Springs church shooting that was right next to San Antonio. And, I was talking about how it was connected to Kiefer Sutherland and whatnot before that even happened. So that's why it was important that I got that phone call from Texas the same day that I saw this big story with Granger Smith, because I hadn't had a phone call from anywhere else in the world lately until that same day that his son dies, and I get one from Texas, and his son dies in Texas. So, I know it was important, and that's why I looked more into the story, and, it's crazy. My cousin's even in a documentary that he made. But I put this Allen Iverson video out on 12/12 of 2015, which is Bob Barker's birthday. That's what I was getting at, I guess, and there's more with this Price is Right stuff that's going on, because it's in Happy Gilmore, right? The movie that's connected to Philadelphia and the Comcast Center and so on. But I just bought that guy's book. I'm trying to read it to, I bought Terry Neese's book about his experience, but I watched this other movie where this other guy named Ted says that he's the reason that Terry got the perfect showcase and whatnot, and it seems pretty believable what this guy wrote in his book, honestly. And because his niece also got on the show just like a month after him, and Ted wasn't at that show, so you know what I mean? How did she get on the show? And she also won the showcase, and they were sitting in the same seat, and his last name's Niece, and it's his niece that got on the show. He says he couldn't even hear the Ted guy, even if the Ted guy was the one who was telling him, he couldn't even hear it, which, who knows? I don't know what to really truly think about it, but reading through that book, I was like, it's the guy just seems really legit, so maybe I'm just being fooled, I don't know. That's why I don't fully believe anything. I just kind of just take everything with a grain of salt and try to figure it out. But anyway, this Iverson video, so they take it down on 6/5, and the whole video is about Iverson, Philadelphia, and the, possibly foreshadowing the next false flag. And they take it down on 6/5, which is the 156th day of the year. The word false flag equals 156, and Philadelphia equals 65 in Gematria, and so does Allen Iverson. And then they take it down on the perfect date, right? And you would think that it's, okay, possibly a coincidence, but this same video, back on March 6th, which is the 65th day of the year, they restricted this video, right? So they put restrictions on this video on the 65th day of the year, and then they fully take it down on the date of 6/5. And the same day that they put restrictions on it, the Philadelphia 76ers just so happened to be playing their 65th game of the season, and they lost on a buzzer beater that was made by Zach LaVine, whose name equals 65 in Gematria. So it's like, I know that YouTube is doing this on purpose. There's a reason that they're taking this old video from 2015 that actually has 3 other parts that aren't getting taken down, or however you say it, that have the same title in it, It's weird. So they take down this one video, and they restrict it on 6/5, then take it down. Restrict it on the 65th day of the year, then take it down on the 6/5, and Philadelphia equals 65, and Allen Iverson 65. Come on. You know that there's people doing this, but, and it just makes me wonder, are they just doing it just to help me? Is it like this malicious thing? Or, they're not, are they trying to tell me, hey, quit making these videos, we're going to start taking this stuff down? Or they just, what I've discovered over the years is they're literally just, whenever they do this, I always notice the pattern that exists with it, and I learn a bunch of stuff from it. So it almost seems like there's somebody or something that these things are happening for this, and, it's helping me get a better understanding of the world. So where I was talking about how all of these things are bad and people are controlling the world with this system, but, are there good people out there trying to help me understand this knowledge too? You know what I mean? I don't know. Just truly makes me wonder. Or maybe they're doing this for some reason that they know that somehow when I make a video like this, somehow it's changing the frequency, vibration, whatever that's going on in the world, just as they do with the mainstream media. And somehow I can manipulate it for whatever the reason. And when they put these things in front of me, I'm actually manipulating things, and, I don't even realize it. And then I'm creating something that they want off of it, if that makes sense. There's a lot to think about with how this works because, you know, it's complex. I don't fully understand what's going on, but whenever these things happen, it's always by the numbers, and it's always showing me something. It's always making me get a better understanding. So, you know, maybe that's not what they want at all, but that's what I always get out of it. So, we also had the Virginia Cavaliers win the college basketball championship this year, and that was connected to Allen Iverson that I had talked about earlier in March with all the blackface stuff and how it was synced up to my video about Little Bow Wow, who had got arrested for his girlfriend beating him up or something like that. And I said it was showing me my video about Bow Wow and Like Mike. And he wears the Allen Iverson jersey in that movie and a bunch of other things. But Allen Iverson was from Hampton, Virginia, and in 2016, when Virginia was playing Hampton in the college basketball tournament, their coach, Tony Bennett, had collapsed and whatnot. So it was Virginia versus a Virginia team. And then later in 2015, we had the Bridgewater shooting that was in Monetta, Virginia. And I had a YouTube strike for all that. And I talked about how it's connected to Philadelphia because it said Franklin Bridgewater on the bottom of the screen, and then I had the story of the guy from Pennsylvania in NASCAR who had died. So they were telling us about the Ben Franklin Bridge that's in Philadelphia. So the last time, a lot of the stuff I've been talking about Philadelphia over the years is about earthquake symbolism. And the last biggest earthquake east of the Rockies was also in Monetta, Virginia. Or, I wrote Monetta out here, but it's in Mineral, Virginia. And, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out here. Virginia Cavaliers go on and win the college basketball tournament this year. Possibly, I don't know. Maybe it's all pointing to Virginia. Try to figure it out. Still think it's all for Philadelphia. There's something just super important. Always has been. And that Like Mike film was also important to Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan's important to the wall symbolism. And he also owns the Charlotte, what are they, the Hornets, and they play in the Spectrum Center. And Hulk Hogan got his revenge against Earthquake at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. Patrick Ewing, the guy from Georgetown and also from Jamaica, right? He used to be an assistant coach for Michael, for the Charlotte Hornets and whatnot, and so on. So that movie, Like Mike's, important. And remember, the capital of the country, Jordan, used to be called Philadelphia, and then it was destroyed by earthquakes. And we talked all about the number 310, and Zach LaVine being the guy who made the buzzer beater against the Philadelphia 76ers. Zach LaVine won the slam dunk contest in 2015 wearing the Space Jam jersey, the Michael Jordan Space Jam jersey. His birthday was on 310, this big number I've been talking about. That's also the same day Michael Jordan retired from baseball. It's also the same day Osama bin Laden was born. And, Osama bin Laden's birthday is also, or he died 3 months and 10 days before the founding of Al Qaeda on August 11th. And he died on the same day that the Illuminati was founded in the year 1776. So, lots of important stuff going on. Iverson even finished his basketball career in Turkey, though I've talked about equals 310, and why Turkey has been important to a lot of it too. So, Hulk Hogan, the day he got his revenge against Earthquake was the anniversary of Haile Selassie dying. who was important to the Ethiopian airline crash that was on 310, and so on. So the WrestleMania, they foreshadowed this date big time with the ex, Jamaican wrestler Kofi Kingston, who won the championship and whatnot. So I've been watching out for that date. It's important to the flag symbolism too, because it's the 239th day of the year. So it's an interesting day, August 27th. Allen Iverson also it has me thinking. I talked about this a while back, but his nickname is the Answer, right? So it's like there's a clue with Allen Iverson that I'm not picking up on. If his nickname is the Answer. So what is the answer? I've been recently just asking out loud, like, what is the purpose of this life? Like, what is the answer? You know what I mean? Like, what is? I literally even think I even said, what is the answer? Like, why is it so difficult to understand this knowledge sometimes? Why not just make it easily understandable? Like, what's the answer? What is the piece that I'm missing to fully grasp the purpose of how all of these things are aligned together, things that don't seem to make sense, that do make sense? What is the answer? And Allen Iverson's nickname being that makes me even more think that someone or something does this to try to help me understand and understand the purpose. And that's what I've said a lot with this August 10th date in 2016. In 2016, after a bunch of that stuff happened, we got this massive amount of new knowledge in regards to how this all works. So I just wonder if, in the next year or so, we're going to figure out something just super big that is going to make all of this make a lot more sense. But, I also when I put out this video, Allen Iverson's birthday is 6/7. When I put out that video about Allen Iverson, it was 6 months and 5 days before his birthday. And think about how they took my video down on 6/5 and restricted it on the 65th day of the year, and so on. So he's born on 6/7, which is the 19th prime number. I put that video out on the day that leaves 19 days in the year. His nickname's also AI. A, the first letter, I, the ninth, like a 19. It's the year 2019. 19 days before this date of 6/24 I've talked a lot about with Rocky Cold Vito last year and why August 10th was important. So, just makes me wonder here. Artificial intelligence. There's lots of people on here who talk about how that's just how this world works. It's all about AI and artificial intelligence and so on. So, just something to think about. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the answer. It just intrigues me. It seems more and more real every single day. But at the same time, that there's people who understand it seems. So. Also, if you use the end date and you go from the day I put that video out, actually, you don't need to use the end date because I put it out in 2015. So 16 was a leap year. So it was 178 days without the end date even. I put that video out 178 days before Allen Iverson's birthday. Allen Iverson equals 178. Like, I didn't plan that at all. It's just how it all worked out. It's craziness. Oh, it seems bad too. He just turned 44 years old today, and AI equals 44, and his birthday's 6/7. Both these numbers are usually connected to death and whatnot. So hopefully Allen Iverson doesn't die, but just something. I'm just pointing it out. He turned 44 years old on 6/7, and it's just usually numbers that you see around sacrifice and whatever else, death, killing. I'm gonna leave the video there, I guess. There's so much more I could talk about, because like my friend Tom, I've recently been documenting a whole lot about. Ran into him on a couple weeks back on Memorial Weekend. I haven't seen him in forever. Didn't even expect to see him. But in regards to AI and artificial intelligence and whatnot, I made this post about him and the new movie Jumanji, and also the movie The Matrix. So I can't remember what exactly it was, but I talked about Jumanji, and then the next day I woke up and I had this notification from 2012. Somebody had made a comment on this post or whatever on Facebook with my friend Tom, and what I was talking about was Keanu. And I made this. I talked about this like years ago. This isn't a new post, but I talked about Keanu Reeves and Nicolas Cage and my friend Tom being vampires, right? And think about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and how it's been important, and so on. And I don't know. Just recently, I've been documenting about my friend Tom a whole lot, and I'm trying to think. I went back. Oh, that post is from May 17th, but I talked about the date of August 11th in this post somewhere, apparently. Oh yeah, he even has the same birthday. My friend Tom even has the same birthday as Keanu Reeves, right? Both their birthdays are September 2nd, and then I had synchronicity with them. I don't know where I typed it in. I know that I talked about August 11th in this post, which I thought was interesting. There was something to do with Robin Williams and whatnot. So, like I said, yeah, I'm going to leave the video there. It's just some random long video. A bunch of things that don't seem to make sense if you don't know what I'm talking about, but they all truly make sense to me. And if you come read my blog post, I feel like you just got to start back a ways and maybe watch a few of my old videos, and it'll make a lot more sense. Because I explain a lot of things on this blog, and then I don't do it for days, and then I get lost as to what I'm talking about, because there's just so many days and so many synchronicity things that happen to me all day long. If I don't write about it, I won't even remember it. It just happens so much. So, have a good one. Peace.